What's going on, everybody? So in this video, we are going to be talking about some of my top sales tips you absolutely need to know when it comes to generating more leads, closing more deals, and increasing your revenue. Now, before we go ahead and get started, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you haven't already. Check out our masterclass at saleslegacy.com, where you're going to get a free 1-hour training to take your sales game to the next level. So make sure to check it out at saleslegacy.com or click the link in the description. And let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, so the first tip I have for you when it comes to generating more leads and closing more deals is actually understanding how powerful a network can be. Now, during my time when I was at Oracle doing tech sales and things like that, network was important, but it wasn't that important because the way we did outbound was kind of like cold email a bunch of people, right? So, there wasn't like really a personal relationship between me and, let's say, all the clients that we had and things like that, or people we reached out to, because it wasn't that necessary. Because when you work at a large company, it's like they connect with the brand so well that you don't need that personal relationship all the time, right? But I think if you're a small, medium business, or if you're a startup, personal connections actually play a pretty big role when it comes to generating sales and doing different things, right? It's like, for example, for me in the NFT space, and again, I like to talk about NFTs these days because, I spent a lot of time the past few months in that space. And I can tell you that for crypto and NFTs, your relationships and your network is everything, right? Understanding like key information that a lot of people don't have in the NFT space is very important to make the right decisions, having the right partnerships, having people trust you so that whenever you put something out or you want to sell something, there will always be people who support you. And so, networking, especially as a smaller business or something that's just starting up, is extremely important, especially in something like crypto, for example, where it's like a very growing industry. Like, a lot of the information that you need to know is not available on Google just because like there's not enough content creators creating content on it. And so it's like a lot of like the insights of like how the industry works, what really goes on behind crypto and things like that. Super, super important. And so for me, as I built the Parallax, which is my media company in the NFT space, one of the things I've done personally is like try to reach out to people, or they reach out to me, try to create content that attracts the right founders to me, so that right now it's like we're all like young founders trying to make something out of nothing. And then one day, some of us are really going to make it. And because we built those relationships during a bear market when everything's down, we all know each other, and it's like a lot easier to network. So when everything's pumping up and everything like goes crazy again, there's that relationship, there's that trust. And even if someone's like 10 times bigger than I am, because we built that relationship way in the beginning when we first started out, when we were all really small, it really matters, right? And so building the right relationships is key, especially during a down market for crypto and NFTs, for example. But even if in a market that's up or it's already large, I would say if you're a smaller company, don't underestimate the power of networking, because one connection can actually take you very far. And sometimes that connection can just tell you one thing that kind of changes the whole directory of your life. That's been pretty powerful for me. So the next sales tip that I have for you is understanding pricing, right? So if you're an entrepreneur, or you sell your own products and services, or maybe you work at another company, a lot of times you have to compete on price. But what I've been learning recently is that you can charge as much as you want if you're able to provide more value than the money you ask, right? So for example, let's say somebody gives you $100,000 and you give them back $150,000, and it just happens every single time, right? You give me 100K, I give you 150K back. How many times do you think you can sell this product or service? Probably infinite times, right? Because people are getting significantly more value than they put in. It doesn't have to be monetary value. It could be perceived value. It could be many different things, but that's the name of the game, right? So what you want to do, or what I'm personally trying to do, is I'm actually not trying to be the cheapest, because when you're trying to be the cheapest, it's like your margins are low, your services that you offer are not going to be as good. You're going to be racing to the bottom eventually when the market becomes saturated and you're competing with everybody who can do the same thing and they copied your services, right? So what I personally recommend, and what I'm doing for myself, is trying to increase my prices as much as possible and finding different ways to justify my price and provide value in different ways, whether it's level of confidence, whether it's you're really achieving the goal that somebody is paying me for, doing it really fast, making it very easy for the client or the customer or whatever, right? If you're doing these things actively, you can charge very, very, very high prices. And as long as the person feels like, hey, I'm making more money than I'm spending on Patrick, then they're always going to pay, right? And why would they pay me more versus another person? Is because I could get the job done better, faster, with more confidence. So many different things, so many different variables to achieve a goal, right? And so charging high is very important. And I think for an agency, for example, you want to always charge higher, right? Because the higher your profit margins, the more you're able to invest in your employees, the better you can pay your employees, the more they try, the more talent you attract, and then the better services you provide. And then eventually your services will be significantly better than the person who tried to be the cheapest, because they literally just can't compete, right? It's almost unfair. They'll be like, oh, I can't compete with Patrick because I'm going to go out of business if I hire this and this, right? But if you're charging higher prices and you try to do it from the beginning, then you kind of keep your profit margins healthy. And even if they got slimmer down for whatever reason, if they're healthy enough to continue to pay your team, then you can continue to provide a superior service during a difficult period, like a bear market or something like that. And so always figure out a way to charge higher prices. And if you cannot charge higher prices, then you have to reevaluate your offer what you're even offering and change that until it's something that's better, right? Because it's very difficult. Even if you're a master at sales, if you're selling a product that's not good and your profit margin is not good at all, then how are you gonna make money in the long term, right? And so that's something you always got to think about as an entrepreneur or someone who runs their own business. Profit margin, profit margin, profit margin. Charge higher prices. Don't think it's greedy. It's actually greedier to be cheaper in a sense, right? Because people want to pay for higher services and you just want to work with the best people. And so that's the name of the game in terms of what I'm looking for myself. Now, the next tip I have for you is to look for objections. And this means that when you're having a conversation or a sales meeting with somebody, you don't want everything to be a smooth conversation. What you want to do is you want to find all the reasons for why somebody won't buy. The reason why you want to do that is because when you're talking to somebody, they always have these reasons of why they don't buy. You might as well just discuss it during that call, right? This way, when you know exactly what's blocking them from purchasing your product and service, you can start figuring out how you can remove those blockers to make it easier for them to want to buy, feel more confident in you. So my thing is always like, it's not about convincing someone to buy. It's about first qualifying them to make sure that they are someone that should buy your product or service or not. Very important, because you don't want to be desperate where you're just taking on any client just because you want to take them on, because sometimes it's going to be a headache, sometimes it's not going to be worth the time, and you're just going to bleed in a bad situation. But if you instead say like, hey, these are my ideal customers that I want to work with, unless they check all the boxes, I don't care how much money they have, I don't want to work with them. So when you're qualifying people in this way, it's just going to make your life a lot easier. And so if you're able to say like, they have to have this money, they have to be able to do this, they have to have a good brand, and then I'll work with them, whatever your checklist is. And then from there, it's a good fit to work with you. And so as a salesperson, you want to think like your time is so valuable that you can only take on so many clients and you only want to work with the best. If someone is not the best, you don't want to work with them, right? That's just what it is. And if you're starting out, I understand that and that may not be the case, but you always want to value your time in that way, because you have to think of yourself as something premium if you want other people to think of you as something premium. And if you just take everybody under the sun and you're just scraping by trying to make money like this, it's like very tiring and very difficult. Obviously, there's different ways to look at these things, but personally for me, if I really feel like my skills are in demand and people love what I do, and I would rather just work with a few great clients and make money that way than have like 100 bad ones, right? You could argue that if you lose one client, then that's like a third of your money. I totally understand that sentiment as well. But these are things that you definitely need to understand. And it's really just understanding what type of people you want to work with, right? And learning to say no, even though that may lead to less money in the short term, but maybe a happier life and more money in the long term. All right, the next tip I have for you is you want to challenge your prospects, challenge your customers, right? If you ever read the book Challenge Your Sale, which is a pretty good sales book that I would recommend, they have this whole concept of like challenging the way people do things, right? So when you challenge someone, you question why they do things, they think a lot more and they respect you a lot more, right? So let's say someone's doing marketing in this specific way, and I say like, hey, why are you doing like this when everyone's doing this and it seems like it's working much better? They're gonna be like, oh, I didn't even know that people were doing that. Well, can you tell me more about that, Patrick? Right? And so you always want to challenge people's current paradigm, people's current way of how they do things, because a lot of times you have to switch opportunities, right? So you're basically, when you're selling a product and service, somebody's doing something some way, you have to convince them that that's not a good way to do things and they should do it your way. And just so happens that doing it your way requires them to pay for your product and service, and that's how you get the sale. So if you don't challenge people, you don't make them question why they currently do things their way, and they're not going to change. They're going to be like, well, I could go with you, but I like the way I'm doing it right now and I don't want to spend money, right? So you have to really challenge them and make them feel the pain of the current way they're doing it. It's just so inefficient, such a time waster, such an energy waster, that they should just easily just pay you money and just make that pain go away. And that's where challenging is going to be extremely important. So when I'm on my sales call, I'm always thinking like, why would they go with me versus just doing it themselves? Why would they go with me versus going with another person? And when you're doing challenging, you're not only making someone realize what pain they have, but you're also showing that you're the person that's willing to tell them the things that other people are afraid to tell them. For me, actually, personally, literally in my personal life, a lot of times when I help people out, especially when it comes to like advising and doing free advising too for my friends and stuff, I always question what they have, because it's like, I have no financial incentive whether they work with me or not. I'm just like, yo, why are you doing like that? Like, shouldn't you be doing like, here's a couple examples of other things I've seen. If you do the same thing, you're going to be so much better off. And people respect that, right? Because I think a lot of people are afraid to challenge your friends or challenge your peers and just like show them a different way of doing things. And you may not always be right. Sometimes the way someone else does something actually is better than yours. And you're like, oh, actually, I take that back because your way is obviously much better. But a lot of times, if you know what you're doing and you are an expert in your field, it's actually really great to challenge people because they respect it. And it's like, for me, when people give me advice and they're like, Patrick, I think that you're doing this really well, but I think you can do it better by doing X, Y, and Z. And I'll be like, that's a very interesting point. Let me think about that, right? And so I definitely, for me, I respect people that are not afraid to tell me those things. And maybe they might be afraid. It's okay to be afraid, but having the courage to tell me the things that I need to hear, even if they're afraid, actually that's much more admirable. So I highly recommend you to challenge anybody in your life, whether it's your peers, your friends, your boss, your manager, whatever, because it's just going to make you so much better as a person. And it also trains that muscle so that, as you go on in your life and you talk to different people and you try to progress in your career, you will not be afraid to say the things that you really want to say, because some people can live their entire life living in fear and not being able to do the things that they want to do just because they're afraid of a negative reaction or they're afraid of what someone might say. But when you train that muscle, when you understand like, hey, actually, no matter what happens, it actually doesn't really matter, because even if they say something negative back, it's just like water rolling off my back, right? No big deal. So that's a really powerful tip that really helped me, and I hope that does help you in your sales career and career in general and in life. And so with that said, those are going to be some of my best tips when it comes to sales. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And if you want to take your sales game to the next level, make sure to check out my masterclass, saleslegacy.com. Link is also in the description if you want to learn more. My name is Patrick Deng, and I will see you guys in the next one.